On this episode of That Kingsville Podcast, Mayor Dennis Rogers back with us again. It's been a little while, but we're going to get a recap of what's gone on, some future priorities, and a lot of things happening in Town Council. All that and more on this episode of That Kingsville Podcast.
Victory Tuesday.
Victory Tuesday, go Lions. That Kingsville Podcast proudly brought to you by Kingsville Brewery. ChatGPT been nailing it
again.
Yeah, they filled in without you last week. Well, let's see what ChatGPT
he
has.
wouldn't let me help.
I didn't.
Did you get Chat to just do the voice?
I should. And it's like, make it sound like a very astute British person. Oh. No, I'm doing themed ones. So it's fall now.
You
don't have the accent. You don't have the accent. If you put the accent on, I'll let you read them all.
Do it.
We can negotiate.
I want to hear.
All right. The air's a little cooler, the leaves are changing, and pumpkin spice is, well, everywhere. But let's be honest, you don't always want pumpkin spice. Sometimes fall calls for something brighter, crisper, and just a little unexpected. That's where Kingsville Brewery's ready to drink pink lemonade cocktail comes in. It's tart, refreshing, and smooth, like the summer snuck into your flannel pocket for one last hurrah.
Nothing spells fall like pink
a pink lemonade. Of course.
Awesome.
According to robots. Perfect for tailgates,
Robots
fall bonfires, or pretending to help rake leaves while really just sipping in a lawn chair. But heads up, this cocktail is limited edition. When it's gone, it's gone. Like that one perfect red maple leaf you meant to press in a book but lost to the wind. So stock up while you can. KingsvilleBrewery.com. While you're there, check out their full lineup of craft beers, from crisp lagers to bold IPAs, ready to keep your cooler cozy all season long. Kingsville Brewery, because fall's better with a can in your hand. and associate fall with pink lemonade.
Yeah.
Apparently. Thanks, ChatGPT. And thank you, Kingsville Brewery, for supporting That Kingsville Podcast.
Sounds like your jobs are safe.
Watch. Soon enough. Welcome to That Kingsville Podcast. I'm Dave, Kev, Steve. Mayor Dennis Rogers here with us again. Thanks for coming in, Dennis.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Good to see you guys.
We're in the last year of this term. Yeah, 3 years in.
We still got a couple weeks.
We do.
Still got a couple weeks.
We do.
Yep.
However, lots been happening. A lot of things, a lot of progress, a lot of debates, a lot of open issues, a lot of things been solved. So we're going to talk about all of that, and then a little bit of future planning, what's gone on in the future. But more so.
Sounds good.
First 3 years. We happy with how things have gone?
Yeah, I think very happy. I think, from day one, the goal was to set a plan, and not just, I always joke, being in the business world, it's not a plan that, sits on a shelf and gathers dust and, you check in and, you point to the mission on the wall when people aren't doing stuff, right? Like, this is something that, we revisit every 6 months, review our priorities, tracking where we're at, what's been accomplished. Do we want to pull everything off the list? Do we want to continue to move forward? The goal from day one was always to, lay a foundation, obviously for current residents, but, into the future. And I think that's been a balancing act. And obviously, council decisions are, they're never popular, and you're not going to make everybody happy. And, especially when you're making big financial decisions. But, I can tell you the decisions we've made is, I'm proud of the team. We've seen a council and administration work together for stuff. You've seen us really create some value for our residents as far as, maybe some of the facilities, some of the programming that we're doing. Nobody sees the pipes in the ground. That's one thing that, costs the most, and nobody sees that. But that's been, one of our highest priorities that we've had from day one. So it's, proud of the team where we're going. But, the job's not done. Work's not done yet.
No, still filling out this term. So,
yep.
We started off three years ago. We had the Meet the Candidates night. After
wild.
It was 3 years ago. I know.
It's insane.
Time does fly when you're having fun. But back then, the ideas that you had, was there anything that you felt that you still need to address from campaign night and those discussions about how you were running on things?
No, to me, I've always let, my voting record speak for itself. And, to me, the goal was to be a leader and to be a strong leader and to set a vision, when possible. And, I've always seen the mayor spot as, you're a leader amongst equals, right? So, I got one vote just like everybody else. But, for me, the goal has always been, that I've learned probably over the last couple of years, is it's really my job to to build bridges, not only in our community, but with upper levels of government. And that's something I think that we've done. I think you've seen the community really benefit from those relationships that we've built. So, going back to it, to me, the goal was always to put together a plan. And that's what we did. That was the number one thing that I ran on was, we need to accomplish a plan. And we did that. I think it's a good plan. I think it's a plan that leads in, into the future. It's fluid, so we can adjust as we go forward. So, I'm not one to really look back, understand, obviously I've made mistakes. We all make mistakes as people. So to me, I'm one of those that, I understand when I do it, and I won't make it a second time. So
what mistakes do you think have been made?
For me personally, or as a whole?
Both, because there are, and at the end of the day, like you said, you're a leader of council. So whether, your mistakes really are for the taxpayer inconsequential. Really, it's council's decisions. Like, yep. Do you think that council has made mistakes?
I think, we've had some controversial ones just, on building and stories and all that type of stuff. So, I think when you kind of go into it, as, I even said in a council meeting is, I know I made a mistake going against the development because it cost the taxpayers dollars, right? To me, the goal was to vote this way. I thought this was the right way to do it. But then learning from that afterwards is in learning the environment that we're in and learning, the ties and duties of the provincial government and the land tribunal is, if you're going to oppose a planning project, you need a sound planning justification for it. It's not just, I don't like it. I don't like this person. I don't want to see it. Unfortunately, that's the element that we're in. So us as council is, we have to realize that, we need a sound planning justification to oppose it. And then we need something very defensible, right? If we're going to go against a recommendation, if it's brought forward. So I think that's one to me that I learned. That's definitely a mistake I made. But, I said it in the council meeting, I went on record and, moving forward, that's kind of the plan.
I will just butt in for a second. That is a refreshing take because having spoken to council members about certain issues, it didn't matter to them if it was backed up by sound evidence or proper planning. They were going to go with what the people wanted, and that's not always the right way to go. So it's a refreshing take to hear Dennis say that.
Yeah, and we're human, right? Yeah. We're human, and that's yeah. I'm going to take a step back. Politics in a small municipality has gotten very controversial over the last 8 years, right? The internet and social media has villainized people that are trying to do the right thing, and sometimes mistakes happen. And we're human in nature, and that can happen. You may think, like you said, you're doing things for the right motivation, and sometimes you're pressured into doing that because you fear repercussions otherwise, or you think that these are the things that can be ignored. But it's a perfectly reasonable thing to say, yeah, no, we've learned from this situation. Going forward, we have to approach these in different ways, no matter what popular opinion states. So with that being said, have you been able to move forward in a positive direction with council, knowing that, hey, we've taken our lumps based upon a couple of outcomes that, although we thought that we could act this way, this is clearly not the process that we have to follow or can follow?
Yeah, I think you've seen it in council decisions moving forward. And, one thing I can tell you that I really appreciate about our council is, we'll have heated debate on items. Nothing's pre-decided going into it, and if you watch council meetings, you'll see it. And sometimes we'll go back and forth and we'll make a decision. But at the end of the day is, it sits on the table. There's no animosity afterwards. There's no, you should have voted. The mayor doesn't come call you and say, hey, why the heck didn't you vote this way? But, again, a defensible in a court of law, against the, recommendation. You look at council decisions that have happened, really the last 18 months or so, and we've been pretty strong on that, 15 months or so. So we've been pretty strong on that. And I think the toughest part, for the spot is realizing the decisions you make, they have to be what's best for 23,000 people, right? And it's unfortunate. You'll hear from some, and it's the hardest thing to look 1,000 people in the eye and say, what, I'm sorry. I know you feel this way, but this just isn't what's best for everybody. And that's when you get your bullets, and that's when people are going to push against you. And that's the toughest part about this job. But, it's life in the middle of the road. You got to do what's best for the community as a whole. And I've said that from day one is, we got to do what's best for everybody, and it's not going to be popular, but I have faith we're making those decisions.
You talked a lot about the plan that's been implemented, and plans are great, but they do have to lead to action. What are some of the actions that you're proud that you guys are able to achieve?
Well, I think a number of things. We've all heard about kind of traffic issues, and I don't think there's anybody who can say there's one main solution that's going to fix traffic in this town. But, you look at some of the little ones that have been implemented, a couple right turning lanes, one at Main and Jasperson, the other one at Main and Division. You look at, the investment we're doing on the west side with the West Side Collector and bringing that forward to create, a through road around the second. You look at the second being done. So those are little steps that are being taken just to kind of help on the traffic side. We just broke ground and cut the ribbon for a $3 million new community center in Cottam, a multi-use community center. If you were there for that day, I think I saw more people that day than I've seen in a long time. And it's going to be great, not just for that community, but really creating value for programming, for user groups, people being able to use the facility for it.
That's an interesting.
Are you okay with this one?
I'm sorry.
Oh, did I dig up old
$3 million
stuff?
And Cottam? I mean, just want to make sure you're good with it.
I'm sorry, where?
Down to Kingsville.
Oh, that's right.
North.
I'm glad you brought that one, because that one's an interesting one where administration really, that was not a project that had been pushed by administration. If anything, actually, it was one that administration did not want to do initially. And that one came out of a lot of strong advocacy from people from somewhere to the north. Some town that apparently is there.
Don't dig yourself a bigger.
It's Cottam. It's called Cottam.
Oh, right.
We have Cottam listeners, and we
Right,
believe in you, Cottam.
They're getting a traffic light on Highway 3. Leave them alone.
A big deal. No, that is actually a big deal.
It is a big deal.
I'm going to have to stop.
Yeah,
I got in a
That's
car
big.
accident there, okay?
Oh, my God. Really?
Yeah.
You okay?
Emotionally or physically? It came out of the facilities review.
Yeah. And so that one was a little tricky to get to, right?
Yep.
But now it's one of the better projects that council's been able to get to.
Yeah, well, I think, that facility review, that's probably one of the bigger items that's, it's really kind of transcended a few years, right? And it's really evolved from, original recommendations to kind of where they're at now. And to me, that's just a byproduct of, council working with administration, maybe pushing back on some items, hearing from the residents, having open houses, having conversations. And you look at where we're at now, like Cottam's a great piece of it. The other piece is, the Lions Hall. You look at that now as, that's a building that's going to be a community hub in our community for a long time. And you're going to see significant investment in that building now for us to be able to put a key player like SCCC into them, for them to be able to increase their programming and the service they can provide for all of Kingsville. We found a long-term home for the food bank, a nice, secure, private location, big parking lot for them to be able to continue to do the great things that they do, for us to continue to secure a spot for the Lions Club members, as a whole, and all the great things that you do. So again, that wasn't where we started, but that's where we ended. And to me, that is a compromise. That is a team working together for what's, best for the community as a whole. So that's one that, super proud of, because that's, I grew up just around the corner from there and I spent a lot of time in that park. So to me, it's really special to have a community hub there.
And then just recently the decision to look at possibly moving the OPP station.
Yeah. So that, again, another thing that was part of the facilities review. And, it's the number one takeaway that, who people got from that, if you remember that report, is just how bad a shape that OPP station is. It's not one where we can just go in and, we've got just over $1 million in that reserve alone for that building. And that's nowhere near enough for us to be able to fix and accomplish what needs to be accomplished. Because again, at the end of the day, the OPP and the entity that they are is, they need more space. They need more amenities, for things they got to do. And those are things that we have to factor in. So that's, we just had our needs, assume this segue into the needs assessment. So we just passed a needs assessment, for a consultant to come in, and I can say, like, we don't use a ton of consultants. One thing I got to give credit to John and our administration is, we do a lot of work in-house. I know previously, there's been, consultants kind of go out everywhere. And that's one thing where our team kind of drew a line in the sand, is we're going to pick and choose kind of where the ones that we use as far as the dollars that we spend, and rather put it on the team just to ensure that the quality that we get out of it is the quality that we get out of it. So one nice thing about this consultant, it's who we use in Cottam.
Where?
I have a good working relationship with them, but they also have OPP clearances and stuff as well. So they've worked with OPP. They've done some design. I think they're the consultant that worked with the expansion in Essex. So again, check a lot of boxes. So we're going to go through, we're going to look at the OPP station. OPP, what they need for the future. We're going to look at town hall needs, town hall assessment, and as well tying into our public works as well. So those are really kind of the next big buildings we have to make decisions on.
Now, what's going to be different from this study compared to the consultant that you hired to do the needs assessment? Because that, I thought, was the point of that report as well.
No, this one is going to be more, they're going to figure out, how much space do you need, and projecting into the future, and square footage space, and working with the OPP as far as what their needs are, and the space that they need, the amenities that they need, looking at, our current town hall and the staff that we have. And, we put together part of our strategic plan as a Kingsville 2040 staffing plan in terms of what we need as our services grow and as the town grows, the staff to be able to support that, factor that into it. So it's really the next step after that facility review. So a lot more detail for us to be able to make the next decisions.
Now, sorry, Steve, I just have one more follow-up on that, if you don't mind.
No, I don't.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Perfect.
Never a dull moment here.
Bring it with them.
Did I read it wrong that part of it was actually exploring moving the building? Maybe I read the report wrong. So I understood that it also was looking at feasibility of actually physically moving the building, but maybe I had just read it wrong.
It's the conversations we've had is moving OPP back to the original home at Town Hall. Obviously we have a building, we have a facility there. And if we don't need to build a new one, obviously we would like to save some dollars there if we can. So having conversation about potentially moving them there, is that feasible? And then of course in the back, we have our public works yard there as well. So is this a building that the OPP and public works can share? Would we need maybe to do some investment back there? Would we need to expand there in the back? Because we're having some major health and safety concerns there in the back that have been expressed through the facility review with our public works yard. So do we expand from there? Do we move it somewhere else? So it's people and organizations moving, but no buildings physically moving.
Okay.
Well, I know that the renos, some significant renos were done at Town Hall a few years ago. How dire is it at the OPP station? Is it to the point where the OPP is sort of priority one and you have to figure that out? Or does the OPP relocation or renovation or whatever you're going to do there have to coincide with what the decision is for Town Hall?
I think we've always had conversations where they're really kind of linked. I can tell you the OPP station is dire straits. It is a tough spot. That building does need a lot of work. We have conversations with them, repeatedly about, where we're at, and, they're on board and helping, supporting and talking to Aurelia and having conversations on that end to expedite, the processes that we're going through for that. So,
well, and they're unionized workers, right? I'm sure that at some point there'll be issues with employees working out of a building that might not be safe.
We're just, I think any boss is just trying to do what's best for their team, right? So, but I don't know. They've always kind of been linked. Like, we don't want to move one before the other, but that's why we're kind of lumping everything here together to see is it feasible for us to kind of hit the one domino and the next couple fall.
And I understand, and the town has the contract with the OPP to serve as our police force. Is there any risk that, they may not have sort of a home base, if you will, in town? That it's that dire that, they're operating from, Essex and Leamington and Harrow, and basically, they're on the road in Kingsville and they're there to serve, but that base is gone simply because it is such dire straits in that building. And, the fact of the matter is to construct, let's say hypothetically, to construct a new town hall, to get the funding, to the location, that's a long process, and it's an expensive process. But to relocate the OPP, also a process, also expensive, but to me seems a higher priority. And my opinion is it shouldn't necessarily coincide. I get that it can simply, if you want to move into where the town hall is, but is there a contingency? Is there a backup plan to say, hey, we need to provide some sort of base here because this isn't going to cut it?
Yeah, that's what we're working on now. Essentially, that's what this review is going to be able to give us some data. We're going through the process now with the OPP as far as, on the back end, what they need for their needs and dealing with Aurelia. And so that's the process. That's what we're working through now. So the goal is to get all this information, the data, and be able to have that, okay, can this happen now? Have we heard from the province as far as school properties? Have we heard back, as far as, because there's a process now just with the OPP that we have to go to actually physically move them into the building. And they have to do an assessment of the building that they have to come in. And there's a negotiation process tied to that as well. Is there going to be cells there? Is there going to be, I forget the name of the lockup that they have when they can pull the car in and those type of items.
Sure.
So there's still a lot of negotiations that have to happen with the entity of OPP as well.
And there's investment in that venture as well too, which
there is. And there's, they have, I don't know all the details yet because we're still waiting on everything, but there is a program, right? If you have a building for them and, you invested and there's some form of lease back, like I don't know the details yet, so I'm not going to dig too much into it. So those are the things we're looking at, right? Is there some dollars? Is it better for us to own the building and they rent from us, or, they build it and, you name it, right? So obviously dealing with the ministry, them building a building, I'm told takes 10 years. So that's probably not going to be an option.
Unlike the band Dire Straits, money for nothing. Your checks aren't for free in the town. Come on!
It was good. It was good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you're so far away from me. See, my mom is a diehard Dire Straits fan, so I can just start reeling off song titles if we need to.
Sultans of Swing, is what we're going to do?
We could be on every street and I could do it.
Dennis, so...
We're like brothers in arms here, boys.
Now Steve gets to do what he does. So, with speaking about consolidation and future facilities, has the idea about what the town wants to do with the former school properties, has that changed?
No. So, it hasn't. We haven't had the discussion since, I presented a vision to council at a committee of the whole, and, council adopted it for administration to kind of go back and get the information for us to make the decision at a formal council meeting. So as of now, at the high school, we put in, our expression of interest, to the province, to let them know that, we would like to negotiate, for both properties, for us potentially to be able to purchase them. We have heard back that they have received it. So now we're just in the waiting process of hearing back from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs as well as the Ministry of Infrastructure to find out what the stipulations will be for that. Because there's two routes of purchasing a property, and I think you've seen a local property come up for sale in Old School, but that's, there's the open bidding where anybody can bid on it, and who knows what the price is going to be, and then you could get it for lower, but you could get it for higher as well. The other process is achieving a provincial priority. Really two items earmarked for school properties is long-term care and affordable housing. So our goal is housing. Still waiting on the details of what that looks like as well, but that's the box we're looking to check on to achieve. So once we get all those details and the information, then we'll negotiate with the ministry if that's feasible. Council will decide if that's feasible. And then if we decide to move forward, then we would go back with the school board and then obviously negotiate as far as, price, get our own assessment, get our people in there, and put together a formal offer. So
I don't think you want your people in there.
Well, I think that's... that probably helps us. So, yeah. And as far as KPS, the goal was always to, really control what goes there and, have a full cost recovery on it. So,
yeah, we've talked about years ago when I first started with the ECDEV community,
Committee Dave.
Committee Dave, thanks.
I've heard of
I
this
remember
guy.
that guy. He was a pretty cool
You didn't
guy.
even need to say it.
Yeah.
I think I delegated this guy in that dev committee a long time
I
ago.
believe he did. The idea for future growth, big topic that's come up as of late, right? West Side Collector, big government funding in order to help facilitate that. Where are we at with that project? Because we've been talking about it for quite some time. We are starting to see some progress.
Yeah, no, I think it's, we're at an exciting part right now. First we received about $7 million for the West Side Collector Road. At that point, that was the largest single infrastructure grant that the town of Kingsville has received from the province in recent history. And then if you've been paying attention this year, we just received another $9 million infrastructure grant, which now is the largest in the recent history, for the water line. So you've seen work on the second. So the water line is in there. We're going to continue to move down until we hit Fox Lane, and then be able to bring the road down to Fox Lane, and then be able to bring the water line, out to the west side. So our engineers and everybody are telling us, by the end of next year, hopefully, barring any issues, that we should be driving on that road. So that's exciting.
Now, the report did show that there's a section of that road that wasn't part of the study where it doesn't actually connect to Road 2. Will that road continue all the way through to Road 2?
Anything I've ever seen, it's always connected from 20 to Road 2.
Okay, because the report shows that it doesn't. Just 'cause it shows it dead ends at that piece of property that's right at Road 2.
Unless there was a diagram of phases, maybe. But any report I've ever seen, there's never been a conversation to stop it. It's always been, that was the goal, was for it to be a through road and go from 20 to 2. We're spending $20 million on it, right? So we want to make sure that, it has full access there, and that'll open up, obviously, access off of, Prince Albert and Bernath and some homes on that side.
That's what we're waiting for, is in order to service all of that future growth, we need the resources, the infrastructure. And a lot of people aren't coming back to the whole future planning thing. We're not aware of just the scope and the scale of that future growth of the town of Kingsville. Yeah. So in this ebb and flow of information and whatnot, what adjustments have you had to quench or quell from people's opinions because they hear numbers and then it's scary and, like we're naysayers all of a sudden? Yeah. This is a long-term plan.
Yeah, it's a long-term plan. And, have your say has been great. That's another thing that's been adopted by this council from day one is, just put different projects up on there and people that have, be able to ask questions and post it, and really it to be fact checked by staff and administration. There's another piece on there. It's called fact check, where if you have a question about something, you go on there and administration will give you the information, right? So, that's one thing that's always going to be a battle, is factual, true information. So that's why, our council's always pushed to be available. Like if you email, you call us, like we're getting back to you. We want to give you answers as much as we can. But, I think that's a battle that, just talk with some of my colleagues in other communities. It's something we're all facing, and you all try your best to put the information out there, and, you got to do the best you can. Right. So but just one point, if I can, just on the, in the future is, we hear, we talk about 3,000, opening up 3,000 new homes. Right. And I think that, that scares some of the quiet, small town people. But, I want people to realize is, that's not going to be over the next couple of years. Like this is decades. Like this is a project that's going to open up the west side, for decades. But also what it does, it provides, some extra capacity for almost 5,000 homes on that side for water pressure. So this is like probably one of the biggest infrastructure projects our town has seen in decades. And it's really going to be one it's going to secure long-term growth and feasibility for homes, as well as provide that overlap to support current homes. So it's a big deal. And, that's, we're proud about it.
And it is an accomplishment to be able to say that this is something that you can feasibly do within a community. Most times, development like that happens out of either a severe necessity or some entrepreneurial developer says, I'm going to buy a chunk of land, and then bam, you get what you get. Yeah. But with the town having the ability to control that, it does gear us up for a little bit of strategic development. Now, there's been an underlying commentary about not becoming Leamington, right? Or Windsor or Tecumseh or whatnot. And the fear is when we start to see things like Wendy's pop up, and you see these franchises that aren't traditionally from a small town, that sentiment of, well, here we go, it's all gone. It's right, like where's my little Kingsville, right? Like that's the narrative.
Yeah.
How much has this been taken into consideration to ensure the livelihood and thriving community that we've got continues to persevere into the future?
Yeah, so I think, it was, I believe it was earlier this year, I brought forward a notice of motion for design guidelines for the downtown core, and, which council adopted. So that's one of the items that's, it's on our strat plan now, to move forward with, and hopefully, I'm not sure who's going to be here, in the next 4 years, but I can tell you if I'm sitting in the seat, that's going to be something that I'm going to be pushing for. So, weren't able to do it, the beginning. There were some things we had to put in place as far as a strong financial plan or asset management plan, really the things that the community has to be great at, which is infrastructure. We spent a lot of time, work on that, getting things in place. So I think items like, design guidelines is going to be helpful, because you can look at sign bylaws, you can look at color schemes, you can look at all that stuff, all the communities that you hear about, that have them. So I think that's one piece. It's just, it's just going to take time. And I think the other flip side of it is, I had a resident say, how could I let Wendy's, come into this town? But it's, again, there's provincial mandates and things that happen within the planning process, and then things that are delegated, at the administrative level. Like a lot of that stuff doesn't come to the council table, right? And if you're pushing back to it, what are we going to do? We're going to fight in a court of law. So to me, the goal is, you look at the beautiful Niagara on the lake, right? I'm pretty sure there's a Starbucks there, right? And I'm pretty sure there's a McDonald's there, but how does it look? Right. So you can't stop what goes there. But the goal is, I think, is to maybe find some scheme that will work well within the features of your community. So that's something we're working on.
I'm sorry. I do have follow-ups if you
go ahead.
You looked like you were eager.
Oh, no, I've got questions, but
yeah,
follow up.
So the idea, though, of what you've imposed and started to develop is our current downtown core. Looking toward the future, there has to be an additional economic center in order to facilitate that, which therein lies that separation between, much a la Leamington, right? That was a misunderstood development plan that's divided the town. So being strategic going forward, is that something that the council or council administration is in consideration of? We have a business liaison manager with
business relations officer.
Thank you. I apologize.
No, it's
business
okay.
Relations officer. So how engaged, it's Brandon, correct?
It is correct. Yeah.
So Brandon Stanley's been appointed to that role, or has received that role with the municipality. How engaged are we with that in his function now with the town?
I think very engaged. I think we've had a vacancy in our downtown Four Corners for a very long time. And I think now you see a business there. I can tell you that's a direct result of our town advocating and pushing and having conversations with that landowner and trying to find, and maybe, didn't find the business, but push the urgency of how that looks. So, I'm not taking credit of it by any means, but I can tell you our business relations officer is working really hard to build bridges, is not only with the businesses that are there, but also the landlords that are there, but also residents who invest in the town. And, interesting to know, with the BMO building, right? Like, it was sold. What's going to go there? What's the investment that's going to go there?
Well, the rumor mill is just live.
I'm sure it is. So again, it's, the team's working really hard. And I think where we kind of carve things out was through, that Main Street committee really is, it was the four churches, right? That's when we established kind of the downtown core. Then you have the Main Street corridors, which go from the church to Jasperson and the church down to Heritage. So, we got our different sectors now. So now the goal is really be strategic about the different spots and put a plan together for them.
Put a baseball store in the BMO building because it has a safe. But anyway, that's terrible. That was terrible. I know that was bad.
You were real fast on the board there,
bad.
Gary. I made a Dire Straits pun anyway. So yeah, these are the things that in order to go forward, there's an engagement from the. It wasn't that funny.
No, we're laughing because it was so bad.
All the moms will like it.
But we're all dads, so
yeah,
we'll take
exactly.
the we'll take the
Wouldn't
dad
have
joke.
Steve any other way. Now I lost my train of thought. Thanks a lot. No, that engagement and that reassurance that the municipality is executing initiatives strategically in order to make sure that vacancies get filled. I believe it was Councillor Neufeld that presented something, if I'm remembering correctly.
Correct.
So these are things that are vital for the livelihood and the community. I don't want to say persona, but reputation. This is the flavor of town.
Yeah, it's the core, right? It's the core of our town. It's the first impression of our town. It's the first, when visitors come in, it's the first thing that they see, and it's the first essential point of pride within our community. Yeah. So, I think, one really blessing in disguise is, we had a great economic development tourism officer that, moved on for some other items. And we were able to be now strategic about that position where we split it. So now there is solely a business support, business relations officer with Brandon that's working with, businesses of all sizes, the BIA, small business, people investing, you name it, just to really build that relationship as a concierge for people that want to do stuff and move forward and support and finding grants, you name it. And then now tourism is under, Tara on the communication side. So it's great. So we're able to do so much more on that side. So I think, again, it's, appreciated the people that have been with us, but now we got an opportunity to really go on a new path and really provide an extra layer of support for the businesses within our community. Because I can tell you now, they need it more than ever.
You're going to have, now you do have another big vacancy in the old Ernie's building. Yep. Have there been any conversations about that? Because as I think everyone in town knows, there are deficiencies with that building that need to be brought up before anything can really happen there, right?
Yep, there is. And, we, obviously we're our team's having conversations, and, we have faith in, the owner of that building, and, they're a proven business within our community. So we look forward to, helping, supporting whatever they want to put in there. So, a big, especially historical building, it's been full. I mean, they were there, 50 years. So it's been a long time. And obviously over that time, buildings, they don't get better. So, there's going to have to be an investment in there. So, we're going to be there as a layer of support, for that business owner,
so to achieve. Under the Main Street development corridor, there potentially could be a 6-story apartment building on that site.
Nope. That's within the 4 churches. So it would be 3 stories. Anything downtown within the 4 is capped at 3 stories.
Okay. So
past the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So if you go past the Catholic Church to Jasperson, that's a 6-story area. And if you go past the Anglican Church all the way to Heritage, that'll be your next 6-story corridor.
Past Jasperson, right?
Past Jasperson.
To Emily?
It's called the Gateway, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So back to the topic about the thriving community in the downtown core. We've a
healthy, prosperous, and sustainable community is our mission, actually.
I like that. You put that on a t-shirt.
Sounds good.
We've lost a couple of community events. We've lost the music festival. Mm-hmm. The Highland Games had to be put on hiatus and moved out.
They're coming back.
They are coming back. I wanted to get to that, but that's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Migration Fest is really, and aside from the Santa Claus Parade, that's the main thing that the town of Kingsville can really hang their hat on. We used to have Victorian days and whatnot. Now, over the last few years through COVID, we had open streets and now block party. Mm-hmm. Where are we at with regards to that being a fixture in town? Are we still in an idea of bringing community to the core?
Yeah, I think it's, we got I could probably tell you, one thing you didn't mention is our Canada Day festivities, right? That's probably our biggest and most well-attended one that we have.
But it's at Jasperson. That's why I didn't mention it. Everything else kind of happened in the downtown core aside from...
Oh, so you're talking about just in the core.
Yeah, in the
Sorry,
core,
I missed
in the core
that.
town.
Okay.
Yeah, essentially the...
Well, Folk Fest was kind of all over.
It was all over. I correct myself. Yes, you're correct. The Canada Day facility. Well, let's group it all together.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, I think if we're talking about the downtown core, I think number one is the BIA has to be a main driver for that, right? So, you look at as far as me being a BIA member, what I would like to see is the BIA heavily involved in those items, making decisions on those items, seeing where are they for or against those items. I can tell you, anytime we talk about anything within the downtown core, that's our first question is, goes the BIA, where's the BIA at on it? So, moving forward, that's one thing that I would love to see. If we're going to expand on events, we're going to expand on, whatever it is the BIA taking an influential and a lead role, on those items.
If we, hang on, I disagree with that. The BIA is not the community. The BIA is a part of our community. And in order for the community to find value in that asset / environment, it has to be an equal part contributing factor. There has to be some value brought from the municipality to say, hey, BIA, this is the thing that we're going to feature and showcase in order to attract people to the town. And the BIA, yes, has to support it wholeheartedly. If we lean towards the BIA to lead those initiatives, they're disjointed in all of their initial objectives for their businesses to get a cohesive opinion, like we saw through Open Streets, where it was conveyed that the restaurants were the main benefactors for that type of an event. You'll never find a common thread between them in order to say, yes, we're going to facilitate X, Y, and Z facility. Where I'm trying to get toward is a matter of, you see communities like Niagara on the Lake. I traveled to Quebec and Ottawa, and there's pockets within those cities, communities, where you see a collection point where there's activity, there's commercial, there's small events that are happening in a park, like a kids event day or a painting,
or the concerts that Leamington holds at the amphitheater. Correct. On a regular basis. And before we get into that, it's not lost on me that comes with a significant tax dollar investment that I don't know our residents would be eager to agree to, because sometimes it's easy to say, yeah, why can't we have everything that Leamington has, and then also be upset because your taxes go up by more than 2%.
Yeah,
which you can't have those same conversations. But in Leamington, those are municipal, like town-driven initiatives.
Yep.
The concerts at the marina, town-driven initiatives. The BIA and the Uptown BIA in Leamington, other than Mill Street Market, where they do have a say in what happens, but that's still...
I think that's a Leamington Arts Center that runs that one, right? The Mill Street Market?
With the support of the town of Leamington.
Yeah.
Supportive. So let me just clarify, when I say BIA leading, I mean, that's them, a heavy presence, them being a part of it.
Sure.
Right. Oh. So obviously everything has to be a town event and supported by the town. Yeah. But I think it goes further as if, you are closing streets or you have an event at downtown where, all those businesses there are going to be in supportive of it, because it's been approved by the BIA. And that's kind of really my point is,
well, we have a business relations manager of business relations. So I'm hopeful that the value would be conveyed to those individuals, business owners, BIA members, in order to benefit from the investment that the town is doing. Rather than the court of public opinion, where it's like, this is just for a couple of people. Maybe, finding that opportunity to have a joint effort towards building something.
Yeah, I think for sure. Like, I think we're definitely open, right? But also too, it's, I'm a firm believer is that, you got to crawl before you can walk, right? And, there's a lot of deficiencies that, we've been working on and fixing. And I think we provide a lot of value for our community as far as some of the town events that we do. Is there more that we could do? Absolutely. Are we having conversation with some people to bring, a buskers festival and a music festival and, art in the park? Like, we're having those conversations, right? So that's something we would definitely, if it checks the boxes, we would definitely support and love to have in our community. So just because you doesn't see it doesn't mean that the conversations aren't being had. But, to me, again, the end of the day is, there's only so much in this pot. Right. So to us is what we've established as priority number one is infrastructure for us to be able to work on that. And then the next really is you talk about priorities, leading the next year is securing, our facilities and our buildings and creating value as well as long-term decisions for our community. And then, you hear Councillor Gaffin all the time. He's like, this is my third term and I haven't been able to do any of the fun stuff yet. Right. So it's, to me, I said at our last council meeting is we're making decisions, we're planting trees knowing we're not going to reap the benefit of the shade, but those are the decisions we're making now. But I know in my heart, we continue to make these decisions. There's going to be councils out there that are going to reap the benefits and be able to put a lot more fun items into the queue for this community. So we're going to get there. It just won't be overnight.
I don't want to say you guys were, and we talked about this early on in your term, but I don't want to say you're handcuffed, so to speak, when this council started. But you've certainly been playing catch up, and I'm wondering where you feel you are in the grand scheme of staffing and infrastructure and stuff like that, as far as and how long you think it will take to get where you need to be. Because obviously we've seen some significant tax increases the last couple of years. We've seen some staff hirings. I will say that I know there was at least 2 OBA baseball championships held in Kingsville, and then there was a men's tournament last weekend. The diamonds look great. There's a lot of activity going on. That's one small area, right? And not everybody uses the baseball diamonds in the arena, and I understand that. But that is obviously a key part of the community. So how far along are we? How long do you think it'll take to get where it needs to be?
Well, a couple stats, and I know Ryan, our treasurer, always cringes when I talk about this because it's a moving target. But for current infrastructure, so that's everything. That's he knows I'm here, so
he won't be allowed.
Hi, Ryan.
He's going to fact check me my numbers always, and I asked him to. So let me know if I'm incorrect.
Yeah.
But we for current infrastructure, it's between 11 and 12 million is what we should be investing in every year. Right. Right now, we're only between probably 6 and 7. Right. And that's been built up over the last couple of years. So you figure is that remaining $5-6 million is the deficit that we face in order for us to fund 100% of our current infrastructure. That's not future, you name it. So that's, you're behind the ball in that, significantly. Right. So that's, again, so you talk about a plan is, within our strategic plan, now we're looking at a 10. We may have to extend it out a little bit more, just, the way things are going. But it's really a 10 to 14 year plan by 2040 is for us to achieve, an 85% funding, which is pretty good in the municipal world.
And then just staffing wise, I mean, because we see pockets of the town that look fantastic, and we see other areas that you look at and you think, well, it really could. It's a little bit of an upkeep or a little bit of an upgrade. And,
so
it comes down to staffing and stuff like that. So how far along?
So I think a couple things. I think you saw a report just that we just had a conversation about as far as operational levels. At parks, waterfront, beaches, you name it. So take a step back as far as staffing. So we approved a 2040 staffing plan, and what the goal was to follow, just to know how many staff we're going to need for the service levels that we provide for the town, to coincide within our 2040 vision. And we've stayed pretty true to that. And, there's always a conversation of how we compare to other communities as far as staffing level. And, that argument I can tell you is we're significantly lower than others. But, to me, I think my message is our goal is to ensure we have the enough people staffed to provide the level of service that our community wants. And I can tell you our community wants high levels of service. So we had an operational plan come before council where we really did different classes of parks, classes of beaches, you name it, for a plan within the staffing that we have now to achieve those service levels. So you saw, Lakeside Park really be a high element there. You saw Cedar Island, Cedar Beaches really be a high element there for us to really put a lot of time and effort. You saw the baseball diamonds, the soccer pitches, you name it. Those to really be our number one focus, just to ensure those are the most taken care of. We got a lot of flower beds, and, the Horticultural Society has been tremendous over the years, but they've really taken care of a lot of those beds. And with, their membership kind of going down and passing those on to the towns provided some struggles. So, some of those are going to be removed. We're going to put some grass just for us to be able to make sure that our bridge looks good, to make sure the beaches look good, to make sure the building's clean, the grass is cut, you name it. So that's step one. It's a fluid document, so we're going to continue to work on it, but it's, we got to establish priorities that are appropriate for the levels of service for the community. So,
speaking of fluid,
that transition.
What's going on with the Ruthven sewers?
Yeah, so we had this would have been back, what month are we in now? This is September. So earlier this year, we passed an interim control bylaw, which stopped all of any new connections into the Ruthven sewer system. So if you go back to August of 2023, we had those rains, they call it the 1 in a 100-year storm. We had it. And
it seems to happen every 5 years.
Yeah. So, more often than before, for sure.
Storms.
So, we had pockets of neighborhoods that had, significant flooding, within their homes. And there was even some homes that had sewage within their basement, which, shouldn't happen when it floods. So that was our first kind of red flag. So at that point, obviously we had conversation with those residents, we worked on a plan. So we did a lot, we did the smoke testing, we scoped the pipes, we end up bringing in an engineer, and we got a report earlier this year, it was either January or February. And what the engineering report says is that we could not connect a single house, a single industrial unit, a single new greenhouse, no new connections, with that risk to flooding the system. So, of course, when you make that decision, it's not going to be popular. It's not going to be popular when the province tells you to build homes. It's not going to be popular with, your development community or who run businesses and providing for their families and need to sell lots, and, industrial businesses that are selling lots and developing businesses. So that's the tough part. So unfortunately, we had to interim control bylaw, and then we put in a sewer bylaw. We end up finding out that the ag industry, greenhouses specific, were the largest water users. So what we did is we put in a bylaw now to be able to work with them on the quality as well as the quantity of effluent that comes from them for us to be able to bring down how much volume is going into the system. So our goal is with those conversations is for us to bring the volume down, but we're also working on expanding capacity as well. So we brought in a new pump. I think we spent about $1.5 million on the pump, some pressure valves, some other steps that we're taking to be able to bring up the capacity as well. So it's a situation nobody wants to be in. I can tell you it's probably one of the toughest decisions this council's had to make is to turn the taps off for growth within Ruthven. But I can tell you, it was the right decision because we had to fix it, and we're committed to resilient infrastructure. So we're moving along. We're making good headway. We lifted the interim control bylaw on current lots that are there. Anything new, we still have to have a conversation about. So we're making steps. We're making strides. So we're not there yet, but we're working hard at it.
So when a greenhouse is because we're talking about water and sewers at the same time. So the greenhouse is approved and please, this is a question. I'm trying to work it out in my head. So greenhouse is approved for an amount of water capacity as well as an amount of sewer capacity that they're allowed to discharge over a given period of time, right?
Yeah, there's a total flow from our it was either 2013 or 2014 bylaw, as well as the site plans. When we build a new greenhouse, there's going to be site plans that speak to that as well. So there's different quantities that are attached to that. So the point of this new bylaw was for us to really dig in and be able to have, some tough conversations if need be, just to ensure that everybody is compliant with it.
So that's on the site plans, it should have dealt with or does deal with the amount of water they take, which is separate, that's water system.
Yep.
And then they use the water, do whatever they need to do with the water. And then that water, and then the site plan would deal with the amount of that water that they're allowed to discharge into the sewer system.
That's correct. That'll be the new plan is for again, there are restrictions on there. But the new bylaws encompass, because the thing is now is everybody's different, right? So if we did one blanket for everybody, it just wouldn't work. So again, what this new bylaws allows us to be able to enforce what we need to enforce, but be able to look at, where the system's at, where they're at now, knowing where our current capacity is. And it's really a best case scenario for each individual owner. So
is there a thought that the town allowed too much approved capacity, or is it that the greenhouses the town believes are releasing more than what the allotted capacity was?
Well, I think it's
because there must be a disconnect.
Well, I think it's a bit of both, right? I think it's a bit of both is what it is, what we found. So there's, some of these site plans are, they're over a decade old, and there's, let's just say we're making better decisions now, and we're aware of the issues now, and we're fixing it. So, but also at the end of the day, the analogy that we throw around there is, if the road's 60 kilometers an hour and you've been doing 90 on it for a decade, and all of a sudden you get pulled over for doing 90, that doesn't mean the speed limit isn't 60 anymore. So, to me, when you set capacity limits, there's still capacity limits. So,
is there and understanding what I'm sure the answer to this question will be, but is the lawsuit continuing with the OGVG at the current time?
Yeah, so OGVG, the marketing group for the Ontario greenhouse vegetable growers, it is continuing, so that's moving forward. I've had conversations with many of our local stakeholders, just how it's it's not helpful. It's not helpful because what it does, it takes our team away, from making solutions. And, my fear, from day one, and I mentioned this to OGVG and I mentioned it to the stakeholders is, this council is, we don't answer to an organization. We answer to our stakeholders and the people that pay taxes and live within our community. So my fear is the stakeholders that are a part of that are, they're going to get crucified in the court of public opinion. And that's, unfortunately, some of that's what's happening now. But, also too, the goal is to work towards solution. Are we going to sit here and point fingers at everybody for back and forth? Or, to me, at the end of the day, litigation, the only people that get rich there that help is the lawyers. So, again, express my displeasure of where we're at on that one. We want to continue to work on solutions. So, we'll wait to see how it plays out. Obviously, we're confident, in the decisions we've made and the case that we have. And I just, I hope, we've even had conversations again, asking, say, hey, put it aside, come back, let's talk about it. And that fell on deaf ears. So
and just again, and if you can't answer this, I understand, but is the source of that lawsuit, that disagreement, is it the thought that the town approved on a site plan that they could discharge a certain amount, and now it's found that maybe the town approved an amount that shouldn't have been approved?
No, essentially what the lawsuit is the bylaw that we pass is unlawful. That we're not allowed to do what we're doing with the bylaw. So that's the biggest objection.
Okay.
So which, it's, you're dealing with a utility, and I think we've all dealt with utilities, and, if you're in charge of utility, it's, sometimes you run out of capacity and you have to make decisions for users. And that's, that's just the how it works. So again, our goal has always been, we're working with the stakeholders now. We're continuing to find solutions. We got a lot of them that are doing, working towards it so that, our point isn't going to change. My fear is if it does go to court, to be honest with you, and a judge mandates it to stop, right? Like that's going to be catastrophic for their industry and for the stakeholders within this community, because you can't tell me that that's going to be a good decision.
Speaking of utilities and future planning and whatnot, there's still grants and there's still things that the town of Kingsville can take advantage of that both the provincial and federal governments are offering. Things like EV charging stations and things like that. It's something that has always been kind of talked about. What are some of the other things outside of what we've discussed about your strategic plan that, given another year of your term, these are things that you want to kind of pepper in to fill in the cracks between in order to help make your plan more robust?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah. To me, I realize, this is part of the conversation we had when we gave direction to administration for our priorities, and, the conversation, the last thing that I would want, just to maybe play the other side of it is you go into an election year and decisions you're making and notices of motions you're making is based on the election and not what's best for the community as a whole. So to me, I'm making decisions per the plan that we set, what we agreed to, any last minute items. If an opportunity comes up, obviously we're going to take advantage of it. if it makes sense. But, to me, it's status quo. We're going to continue to move forward. One exciting thing you talk about utilities is, we found out, so we've been advocating. Our deputy mayor, Kim DeYoung, sits on the Elk board. And she's been advocating, for the second switch.
Yeah, we've had her on the show. She talked all about it. But
all about it.
Absolutely.
So then, we had John and I had meetings with, Hydro One, and then Kim was involved in those, and end up meetings with the board members. So exciting news we find out is we're actually going to get that infrastructure, which is coming, which is exciting thing, because we all know when the power goes out, usually the whole town goes out. So what this is going to allow is, once it up, is us be able to switch over to another line, so not everybody's out when that main line goes out. So that's that's an exciting piece, right? So I'm not sure on timelines, you name it, but that'll be a good one when we have it.
And looking forward to next year, and it being the last year of the term. It's administration, I'm sure, is well into the budget process at this point. Has there been any direction to administration? I know a lot of times it's informal direction, but have there been any discussions around trying to limit that tax increase to a certain point?
No, nothing initially. I mean, one new thing for this, which I'm surprised you guys haven't pulled up the strong mayor piece yet, but we're saying it at the end, so we'll probably cash it out at this point. But this
Mom's still listening. Don't worry. Thanks, Mom.
Well, I mean, this is the first, strong mayor's budget for the town, right? So to me, I signed a couple pieces of paper, a few weeks ago, which delegates that authority back for us to continue the process that we've already have been on, which is, administration presents a budget, and then, that's passed by council. So that's, one thing, if you're paying attention to municipal politics, that's going to be one thing that's different, on the strong mayor side. A few months ago when I forget, what was it, April 1st or something when it first came. So
I was going to say, you look like you've been lifting.
So, I signed, delegations authority, for hiring, firing a staff back to the CAO. I signed a delegation authority of hiring, firing the CAO back to council. Those are two things I did from the beginning, just to show our team kind of where I'm at. But, as far as the budget, there's been no formal or informal direction, but I can tell you it's, we have an OPP contract increase, that we're looking at. Obviously, we look at increases in infrastructure that we're looking at. So it's, it's going to be a tough one, but you have that conversation with any municipality, and we're all facing the same piece. So it's, unfortunately, I don't have any information as of now.
Well, we got some time yet. There's still, or beginning, mid-September now. Oh my gosh, we're almost end of September.
Yeah.
Time is flying fast.
Yeah,
but Dennis, thanks for coming back.
My pleasure.
We appreciate the opportunity to roll through these. It's been an interesting 3 years. Absolutely. The things that have happened, been done, some controversy, some great achievements. Again, Cottam got a thing.
Cottam got a thing. Soon they'll have a light.
Well, for the longest time, Cottam was always looked over. So Cottam had, top of they had the cherry on the sundae for once. Good for them. And it's a great facility. I've been by it. It looks fantastic.
It looks great. They really did a great job.
Yeah. So, community robustness and things, strategic planning going forward. Dennis, thanks again for coming in. Looking forward to the last year of this term. We'll see what happens in about a year.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Time will tell. Yeah. So you guys leading the charge on that one again? Can I preemptively ask you that? You guys hosting?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think we'll be allowed on any municipal property.
We're not. No, municipal property.
Not in this capacity.
Not in this capacity.
So,
however, we just actually started talking about it. So it's our intent to hold another meet the candidates.
It's a good forum.
Well, and I
maybe
think
on the public path on Jasperson.
I was thinking just take a sledgehammer to the front of Migration Hall and bust in.
Yeah. Nobody's in there.
No one's in there.
Yeah, that's
get eaten by the rats.
But Steve and Kevin have been a part of it for years, and I've only been involved for the last couple of terms. Stevie asked me before we had this podcast, and then doing it. The community, we found the feedback and with Gary doing the production, it opens the door for a lot of people that didn't have access to find out who these candidates were, and the engagement that the candidates had within this event. I think fully gives everyone just a taste in order to ask more questions or investigate further and make an educated choice. So we'll we'll continue our discussions, figure out how we want to do it. We had lots of time. There's more things to talk about before that.
So one last question then for you guys. Hopefully I'm not taking too much time. So
Whose podcast is this?
take strong mirror. I'm taking over, Steve. So if I could hear from each of you,
No, we're not running.
maybe one high.
No.
Don't do it.
Nope.
Maybe one high and one low that you've seen from council decisions these last 3 years.
Oh.
Our opinion.
That's a tough one. I can give you a high.
And maybe it's not a low. Maybe it's like, I would like to see this explored more too.
Ooh.
Well, that goes along with my high we joke about Committee Dave. The school properties has been a personal thing that I have been very strongly in advocacy for investment by the municipality in order to future plan for both socioeconomic reasons, but also for the livelihood and building the foundations for the future. We have a unique opportunity. I'm glad that the council is addressing it, albeit you got your own ideas with what it is. That aside, there's other factors that come into play. So I think that's a big high for me. Lowe's Cottam got the first building on the.
Well, I was going to say, we know that that's not Kevin's high.
Actually, it is. I honestly, I think seeing council able to take that initial report, which I think residents had a lot of good reasons to be concerned with that report. I don't think that there was ever any ill intent or from administration side any thought that what they were doing was ill conceived. But I think the lack of a better term, really horse trading that happened out of that to create the new facility in Cottam, create a good discussion around what happens with town hall and with the future. I think that is a high. Really, to be able to sort through that and for council to be able to come to a decision or a group of decisions that really helped shape what that could have looked like. Because when it was kind of presented at the first, I'm not sure and I think the outpouring from the community showed I'm not sure it was the right move. And I think where council landed is a lot closer to what is best for community, maybe not best for dollars and cents from an administration standpoint. Yeah. And administration has a different set of priorities than council does. Administration's set with running the business of town, and council runs the vision of town. And I think council being able to sort through that difference and be able to come up with something that is relatively still financially sound and still aligns with the community's vision was a great set of political decisions. The one downfall, honestly, that did end up getting sorted, I thought that and we talked about it a lot, but the Jasperson intersection, it seems like such a small thing.
Can I tack one onto it? Things like the lighting bylaw too. Like I think that there was a few things that were very quickly decided, okay, we got to react. And it wasn't very well thought out. And it caused a lot of internal disruption within, business owners in the community. Yeah. Especially when we look uptown and, there was funding for lights on each of the, LED lights and sconces and things like that. It looks like a little bit of a reversal. Now, we discussed earlier, you've had the opportunity to have some of those errors, those corrections. So, in my opinion, if that's the low,
it's not bad.
That's not bad.
and I do want to commend this council on some great budgets. And we've had Ryan in and gone through them, and they if anything, in my opinion, almost on the lean side still. Yeah. But understanding that there's a lot of people in the community that would disagree with that sentiment. Not that I love paying taxes, but I do understand witnessing a lot of decisions that there's a strong correlation between the amount of money that you pay and the amount of services you receive. And it's difficult to be upset with the amount of services you're receiving if you're not willing to pay more money.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that council has done, and with administration support, has done a great job on budgeting. Really do. And
Appreciate it.
yeah.
I think one thing that's impressed me about this council is their availability and their willingness to help. I've spoken to several members of council. I know we spoke to Councillor Lowry when we had concerns about the crossing guards.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
she responded and reacted to that. My parents had an issue with their home. I reached out to Councillor Neufeld. He was on it right away and even did some personal assistance in the matter. Dennis, you and I have reached out to one another a couple of times. You've bounced ideas, I think, off all of us. But, when we've reached out to you, you've been there. Deputy Mayor DeYoung.
Yep, Mayor DeYoung.
Councillor Gaffin is always available. But I'll be honest, I haven't had a need to reach out to Councillors Patterson or Chaucy. But I'd like to believe that it's the same. So the availability, the accessibility to council and the way they've really they're not shying away, they're not hiding. That's one thing that's really impressed me. I think there's probably still some concerns about 6-story buildings and development and overall development in the community.
Yeah.
And there are people who are going to look at that as a negative, and others that'll say, no, it's positive. I mean, for me, again, it just simply, you're taking away arable land. What's it going to mean if we get that 1 in 5-year storm? Where's the water going to go? And that would be my concern. Like, you can tell me that there's stormwater capacity and sewage water capacity, and I'll believe that, and I trust in that. Mm-hmm. But we get that storm, and you're taking away more areas that can drain. That would be a concern, but only a concern once it happens. So, like I say, the grounds at our facilities, they're well used, they're well maintained. The pickleball, the tennis, I think we are really trending in the right direction. You've made some hard decisions with budgets. I mean, you're right, they are good budgets, and they are in a tough position because they are playing catch up, and I think it's an interesting question. I wasn't going to weigh in at the time, but when you asked about the sort of a leaner tax rate, I'd like to think that thinking has gone away. I'd like to think that this council is going to come in and say, yeah, it's an election year, but I would rather look to the future and say we still have to catch up. I'm not worried about a lower tax rate, because a lower tax rate is actually going to hurt us more, and say, no, this is what we have to do, than think, am I going to lose my seat because it's an 8% tax rate?
And a lot of
you get smashed.
Yeah.
You would absolutely, if it's anything over 5, you get smashed.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, is I'd like to think that wouldn't be the case, because when we've talked about it, and I think a lot of residents have seen it, is the fact that the town is still lacking in certain areas because, for years it was bragged about how we had the lowest tax rate in Essex County. Whoop-de-doo. You can have that, but it has to be relative to the services you're offering. And we talked about Leamington. Once you get south of Seacliff, Leamington's beautiful. Yeah, it's fantastic what they've done there. But I don't want to be compared to Leamington. I don't want to be compared to LaSalle. I want us to be Kingsville, and it's all relative to what we need and what we have. So,
and I think maybe just add one point. I think now you've heard lots of conversations about budgets that cannot go below inflation, right? And I think that's one conversation and element now that has to be a reality. And you talk about how it looks moving forward in the future is, I think that's one commonality is, to pass a budget, below inflation and below, some increased costs. Like, to me, that's just not being fiscally responsible. It's not the most popular answer, but I can tell you what's best for the community as a whole is, that's how it is. If you run a business or, you're making, your job goes up, costs go up, you name it, you have to kind of go that way. So it's, I think at the very minimum, that's where we got to be. But, the goal is, you stretch it out over time, right? So you're not up and down. You have get to a point where you just have a steady, even one where you're continuing to invest in the community, and you got a strong plan. And we got one, and it's going to carry on to 2040.
No. Let's see how it plays out. Thanks for the question. That was good. Yeah, but again, appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to discuss with us. As always, anybody got questions, concerns, feel free to reach out to us. We may or may not read your email. It's our choice. We're not the news. So we get to do what we want. You tune in to our YouTube channel. But thanks again, Mayor.
Yeah, anytime.
We'll see you next time.